Hello, this is Melanie Gorelnik, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the May 26th issue of the Toronto Sun on the Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The first story is Steven Guilbeault to leave Liberals Wednesday over Alberta pipeline deal by Leora Schertzer. Steven Guilbeault, the former federal Environment and Climate Change Minister, plans to resign from Liberty Party Wednesday afternoon in the House of Commons over concerns about Ottawa's latest pipeline deal with Alberta. A source close to Guilbeault confirmed to Postmedia News following reports by CTV News and Radio Canada. Guilbeault is expected to stay on as MP until the end of the spring session, to not affect the government's slim majority government, the source told Postmedia. The MP and former Greenpeace activist, who was once arrested for scaling the CN Tower as a protest, stepped down as cabinet minister under Prime Minister Mark Carney in November, after the government signed a deal with Alberta to advance a major pipeline project. Carney met Alberta Premier Danielle Smith again this month and agreed to aspects of an energy deal, meaning construction of an oil pipeline could begin as early as fall 2027, if specific conditions are met. Now he is resigning as MP over the latest iteration of the Memorandum of Agreement between Alberta and Ottawa, allowing them to fast-track major energy projects while rolling back Trudeau-era environmental regulations. Guilbeault, representing the Montreal riding of Laurier-Sainte-Marie since 2019, was Carney's Quebec lieutenant and Minister of Culture and Identity at the time of his resignation from cabinet. He previously served as Environment and Climate Change Minister from 2021 to 2025, under former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. The Trudeau government passed legislation to try to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2050 and cut greenhouse gas emissions in half by 2035. Carney eliminated the federal consumer carbon tax just weeks after he stepped into office in April 2025. Sources close to Guilbeault told CTV he was disheartened by the MOU and corresponding rollback of the oil and gas emissions cap, making Canada's 2050 net zero goal out of reach, according to analysis from the Canadian Climate Institute. There is a picture of MP Steven Guilbeault taken on February 12th of this year. So it's just kind of a head and shoulders picture. He's wearing some reading glasses that are kind of down on his nose a little bit. He's kind of looking up. Very serious looking expression. Big brown eyes. He's got a gray and brown beard and mustache. His hair is brown with a little gray in there, and the front kind of comes forward on his head, kind of like bangs. He's wearing a dark suit, and you can see out of focus is the Canadian flag. Photo courtesy of Hyung Cheol Park via Postmedia. That story was Steven Guilbeault to leave Liberals Wednesday over Alberta pipeline deal by Leora Schertzer. The next story is CBSA's Most Wanted list nabbed dozens of villains. Then Trudeau killed it by Brad Hunter. There are 17 of them accused in a widespread campaign of terror and extortion of South Asians in Brampton. None of them are Canadians, but we wouldn't know that, would we? Instead, cops, prosecutors, the Canada Border Services Agency, and others will serve up their usual po-faced approach and start scolding you for suggesting there's a problem of foreign criminals in this country. If a triple killer from Burundi was standing beside us, we wouldn't know because CBSA won't release that information using the Berlin Wall of obfuscation, our privacy laws. It wasn't always this way. List started with Harper, ended with Trudeau. In 2011, Prime Minister Stephen Harper's government launched the CBSA Most Wanted page. Dozens of baddies were nabbed and given the boot. On a weekly basis, the agency published releases claiming they had nabbed this killer or that rapist or this war criminal. But in 2015, Canada elected a very woke new sheriff. Virtue signaling trumped governance and safety. And in 2023, CBSA, taking orders from then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, ever so quietly, secret squirrel-like, took down the Most Wanted page. A flurry of nonsensical excuses followed. That was all Justin Trudeau, one CBSA source told the Toronto Sun. He thought it was mean and he thought it was racist. It was neither of those things. What it did do was raise public awareness and help us catch these people and deport them. The source added, and now, when we flag them, the bureaucrats in the government will do everything in their power to block us. They do not want to upset certain demographics. The list was never like the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement or ICE tactics. Instead, it featured high-risk foreign nationals and suspected war criminals, not Joe in the kitchen at the diner next door. Dozens of bad guys were arrested and booted during the list's run. But Trudeau being Trudeau, listened to every sob story, every diaspora political group, every grievance industry stalwart. He wept, he kneeled, he vowed that he would personally will this feckless post-national state into woke conformity, using his staggering magnetism, genius, and all-around coolness. Now, as anyone who hasn't had their head buried in the sand knows, there are no longer hundreds of foreign-born criminals wandering the streets of Canada. There are thousands. Sharing info can help stop crime. More recently, releasing wanted Pakistani national Faizan Ali's photo and description might have saved a lot of heartache. Ali, 25, who lives in Hamilton, was pinched in New York State for allegedly trying to smuggle 89 guns into Canada. The Toronto Sun later learned that Ali has been on the run from cops in Hamilton since 2024, in connection with the death of a motorcyclist. He was also facing an 11-year sentence for weapons and drug offenses. He was released on bail and didn't show up for the sentencing. Normally, an 11-year sentence should theoretically eliminate bail for a non-citizen. Well, you would be wrong. He is now the American's problem and will likely find the judges and system much less empathetic. Now, cops in Peel have swept the streets somewhat clean of the South Asian extortionist gangs. As my friend and colleague Joe Warmington reported Monday in The Sun, the gangs squeezed off more than 300 gunshots to show they meant business. The accused are all from India, with some being alleged members of the Four Brothers gang. One, Sukhwinder Singh, is also wanted for an attempted murder in India. But always remember, feelings and vibes are the ultimate in governance. There is a picture of the back seat of a car, and there's a red sweatshirt kind of crumpled up on the seat, and then in the footwells, there's lots of guns just thrown in there. Photo courtesy of the New York Police Department. There is also a picture of, I guess it's a website from Peel Police, and it's got pictures of these people who have broken the law, and it's just a headshot and their name under it. And you could just see about 20 different guys, and they all look like they're from India. There is no photo credit given. That story was CBSA's Most Wanted list nabbed dozens of villains. Then Trudeau killed it, by Brad Hunter. The next story is Refugee Health Program Abuse is Costing You, but Liberals Ignore It, by Brian Lilly. There are tens of thousands of people in Canada who are getting taxpayer-funded health benefits from a program for refugees despite having their refugee claim denied. That's one of the big headlines from a new report by the Parliamentary Budget Officer. Earlier this year, the PBO revealed that the cost of the interim federal health program, which covers refugee and asylum claimants, had risen from $60 million a year to close to $1 billion annually. On Tuesday, in a follow-up report that broke down the program further, the PBO revealed that roughly 74,000 failed refugee claimants, defined as individuals who made a claim for refugee protection in Canada and did not obtain protection, were still accessing this gold-plated health plan despite being subject to a removal order, meaning they had been ordered deported from Canada. In addition, 27,759 failed claimants were in the wanted inventory, meaning they were subject to an enforceable removal order who failed to appear for removal proceedings, and the CBSA is working to locate the foreign national, the new report said. This is nothing short of an abuse of the system, caused by a system that incentivizes abuse. Temporary program being abused by thousands. The IFHP is supposed to give stopgap health coverage to refugee and asylum claimants until they qualify for provincial or territorial health benefits once their applications are approved. The problem with the IFHP is that it provides a level of health services that most Canadians don't get from their own government health plans, including physiotherapy, eye care, dental services, and more. This is part of the incentive program for those looking to abuse the program. Resettled refugees were on this program for an average of 3 months before transitioning to a provincial program. The PBO report found that for fiscal year 2024 through 25, the average duration of coverage for asylum claimants was roughly 4 years. The people sitting in this program, using up expensive health benefits, aren't even real refugees. They are mostly people who came to Canada as international students, on visitors' visas, or as temporary foreign workers and then claimed asylum. Since 2023, claimants with prior temporary resident approval have accounted for an average of 79% of all claims, up from 52% in the pre-pandemic period, the PBO report stated. Liberals took over a program that worked and failed to manage it properly. This program, which has only grown due to Liberal mismanagement of the program and the asylum refugee program over the last decade, cost $822 million in 2024 through 25 and is expected to cost more than $1 billion this year. The Carney government has introduced co-payments for some services, such as prescription drugs. That is expected to save some money for taxpayers going forward. But those savings could be easily wiped out due to the government not managing how many people are claiming asylum or the backlog in getting hearings processed. Each 1-month processing delay would add $72 to $92 million annually to the cost of the program. Question about abuse dismissed by Liberals. In response to serious questions about this in the House of Commons on Tuesday, Liberal House Leader Steve McKinnon tried to paint the Conservatives who were asking questions as heartless. Quote, "Why are Conservatives against providing health care to some of the most vulnerable people on earth?" McKinnon asked. "The most vulnerable people on earth come to Canada as visitors and then claim asylum?" That's what the PBO report said 79% of those in the program of late are doing. The Liberals are simply trying to deflect away from their incompetence. This program is being abused, just like the asylum system is being abused, all due to Liberal mismanagement. They want to imply that you are an uncaring racist if you question their incompetence. That's a failure on their part. There is a picture of the entrance to the NAV Centre in Cornwall, Ontario. The caption says that it is awaiting the next wave of refugees. This picture is from 2017, and The entrance has some greenery in front, two benches. It's all like a red brick. It's got a big kind of colonnade leading up to the glass doors, and there is a large Canadian flag across the top of the building. Photo by Jeff Robbins via Getty Images. That story was Refugee Health Program Abuse is Costing You, but Liberals Ignore It, by Brian Lilly. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Sun on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The next story is former Deputy PM Chrystia Freeland called Nazi and Zionist dog at Toronto event, by Gordon Anderson. The limits of free speech were pushed at a downtown Toronto event last weekend. Former Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland was discussing globalization at the Miles Nadel Jewish Community Center's Al Green Theater on Sunday, when she was hit with a wave of insults, video from the event shows. A pro-Palestinian protester accused Freeland of being complicit in Israel's war on Gaza, hurling insults at the former politician, calling her a Nazi dog and a monster. "Thousands murdered because of you," the unidentified protester said. "How many children have you orphaned? You monster! You Zionist! Nazi dog! You are disgusting! You are a monster." What the protester said to Freeland. "You are a monster," the protester continued. "What do you have to say for yourself, you animal? You disgusting animal! You are a fucking Nazi, Chrystia Freeland. You are the butcher of Gaza. Those souls will haunt you for the rest of your life. You animal. And you go around with a book deal? You are making money off of genocide, you disgusting dog. You disgusting animal. Who do you think you are?" Wow. In the background, someone could be heard saying, "Get the F out of here! Get him out!" As the protester was escorted up the stairs and out of the theater, he yelled one final accusation at the former MP. Quote, "Robbing people of their money, of taxpayer money to fund Nazis," he said. "You are disgusting. They should haunt you for the rest of your life. You disgusting animal, Zionist dog." The news outlet Al Jazeera published the video on its website. The video was posted on the network's Facebook page and has since been removed but has been shared widely online. Reaction and what the event organizers said. The event was hosted by author Stephen March and sponsored by Canadaland. His only power came in the brief moment when it seemed like he might have been about to do violence. Canadaland editor and publisher Jesse Brown said on X of the protester, "Turns out he was just there to perform for his comrades, who were ready to film him when he first accosted Freeland." Conservative MP Melissa Lantsman called the filmed verbal assault vile in a comment on X. However, several people on social media supported the opinion of the protester. "It's not vile. It is well-deserved," one person said in response to Lantsman. "Sorry, Melissa, I don't agree," said another. "She got off light here as he was saying what he needed to be said to her. If anything, he didn't say enough. She's beyond vile and evil, and I'm surprised that this didn't happen sooner." After leaving politics in January of this year, Freeland accepted a role as an advisor on economic development in Ukraine. The 57-year-old former journalist has written 3 books in her career. Her most recent one, published in 2015, is titled My Ukraine, a personal reflection on a nation's independence and the nightmare Vladimir Putin has visited upon it. Also, Sale of the Century, Russia's Wild Ride from Communism to Capitalism, and Plutocrats, The Rise of the New Global Super-Rich and the Fall of Everyone Else. There is a picture of former Canadian Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance Chrystia Freeland. She is at a podium with two skinny microphones that are sticking out toward her face, and she's wearing like a tomato red jacket over a white top. She's got her blondish brown hair just pulled back, and she's in the middle of talking. She's got both of her hands kind of up in the air, and the background is kind of out of focus. She's got blue eyes too. Photo courtesy of Blair Gable via Postmedia. That story was former Deputy PM Chrystia Freeland called Nazi and Zionist dog at Toronto event by Gordon Anderson. The next story is new details emerge after coaches and parents go wild at U12 hockey game. Video does not do it justice by Dan Balicki. Some screaming, middle fingers, and glass banging apparently were just the tip of the iceberg when it came to a heated situation at a youth spring hockey game in Toronto this past weekend. According to the person who filmed the viral outburst and posted it to social media, that 26-second clip wasn't all that transpired on Saturday afternoon at NFP Athletic Center at York University. Quote, "We were coaching the game after this. The video doesn't do it justice," said Connor Crisp of Connor Crisp's Elite Hockey. "There were multiple parent fights during the game from the beginning. The fights in the stands started in the first period. The game was supposed to be an hour and ran much longer because of the chaos on and off the ice." Crisp said one of the coaches involved in the incident believed the other was promoting rough play in a non-contact game. Where did it take place and what teams were involved? In the video clip, a group of parents was caught on camera appearing to berate an official as U12 players left the ice and headed toward the changing rooms. One man wearing a black jacket and hat climbed over the boards from the outside and yelled at someone on the ice while pointing at them. At first, he was restrained by a woman, but he then swatted away her hand as she attempted to get him down. Nearby, another man wearing team apparel and a red hat was seen shouting, pointing, and giving the middle finger to Crisp, who was filming the incident while standing near the opposing team's coach. Crisp identified the man in the red hat and another man in a Vaughan Panthers hoodie as the team's coaches. The man who climbed on the boards was a parent. "The opposing coach was behind me in the video, so the one coach yelling was directing it at the coach behind us," Crisp said. As the man walked away from the camera, he stopped and slammed both palms against the glass twice before yelling towards someone on the ice. A blonde woman then approached and called the people on the ice animals and said they were sick in the head. While the coaches and players wore gear representing the Panthers, the team said that the programming in question is not affiliated with the Vaughan Panthers. Crisp also confirmed that the incident took place during a, quote, non-sanctioned, quote, for fun hockey tournament. How did social media react to the video? The clip was posted to Instagram on Sunday by Crisp Hockey Training, which noted that the incident took place prior to their game on Saturday. Quote, "U12 spring hockey this past weekend prior to our game this past Saturday," read the caption accompanying the video. Quote, "What is wrong with people?" The video was later posted on X by Klenko Media, which captioned it U12 hockey baby, LFG exclamation mark. Followers on social media were quick to comment on the video and the bad example it set for the kids at the rink. "Way to teach your kids how to act and communicate," one user wrote on X. "That poor wife having to pull her husband off the glass. Family memories," another posted. Quote, "Spring hockey where parents are obsessed with getting their kid to the show," a third person wrote. One user on X joked, "Wish my dad had this attitude when I was growing up. I'd be in the show for sure." What else did the Von Panthers say? Reached for comment, the Von Panthers said that the organization is aware of the video, but that the group appearing in the clip was not participating as a Von Panthers team, and that the programming in question is not affiliated with the Von Panthers. Quote, "We recognize that individuals in the video appear to be wearing Von Panthers branded clothing," the organization said. However, the group shown is not participating as a Von Panthers team, and the programming in question is not affiliated with the Von Panthers. As the incident did not take place within the GTHL programming or at a GTHL sanctioned event, the Von Panthers have limited information regarding the full circumstances beyond what is visible in the video. As a result, we are not in a position to comment further on the incident. The club also stated that it does not condone or accept the behavior displayed by the individuals involved. Quote, "Respect, accountability, and appropriate conduct from players, parents, volunteers, and spectators are core expectations within our organization," the team said. On the Panthers website, the organization's mission statement says it aims to promote sportsmanship, teamwork, respect, and dedication to the sport through discipline and effort. There is a still picture from the video where you can see some of the dads standing by the glass. One guy is wearing a ball cap and a sweatshirt, and he's pointing at the camera mid scream or yell, and then another guy with a dad bod is standing with his hands on his hips looking at the camera, and there's a couple people behind them, and one person, a dad I believe, is like climbing up over the glass. Photo courtesy of Instagram. I also went ahead and clicked on the video link and I watched it, and you know what? It's hockey. I don't know what to say. Didn't really shock me at all. Okay, so that story was new details emerge after coaches and parents go wild at U12 hockey game. Video doesn't do it justice. By Dan Balicki. The next story is Doug Ford offers reporters his wily tip on dealing with nuisance coyotes. By Brian Toey. It's not often the premier has a howling good time with reporters, but he did so on Tuesday afternoon. Premier Doug Ford was in the midst of a media scrum at Queen's Park on Tuesday when he recounted an incident when he howled like a wolf to frighten off a group of coyotes near his home. His anecdote came as he was being asked about a recent incident of coyote attacks. Quote, "I have them in my backyard," the premier said. "You know, you're ready to walk your dog out there, and we have a coyote problem. You're going to think the cheese slipped off the cracker with me, but one night I'm sitting there, and they must have made a kill, and they're screeching. I don't know if you've ever heard them. They're screeching." It was at this point the premier revealed his wily response to the hungry coyotes. "So I went out there and I howled like a wolf. They stopped instantly," Ford said. "No, honestly, I gotta tape this for you guys. They stopped instantly because they figured a big wolf was around the corner." A reporter then asked the premier to recreate the wolf howl. Ford obliged shortly before entering the caucus room at Queen's Park. Wow. The issue has come to the forefront again after recent high-profile coyote attacks in the GTA. York Regional Police issued a warning after a 6-year-old girl was reportedly attacked in Markham on Sunday night. A 16-year-old girl was also taken to a hospital with minor injuries after being bitten by a coyote last Thursday, once again in Markham. Coyotes are common in the GTA, and officials have warned pet owners to keep their animals indoors at night and not to let them roam off the property. If you encounter one yourself, don't turn your back and don't run. Stay calm, wave your hands, and make lots of noise as you slowly back away. Coyotes usually like to keep their distance from people, but should the animal pose a threat to public safety, call 911. Okay, so there is a picture of Premier Doug Ford that was taken on Tuesday, May 26th. He is by some doorway where there's like reporters around him, and somebody is holding up a microphone and a cell phone to him. And he's this guy wearing a suit, he's got silvery hair, and clearly he's in the middle of howling. His eyes are closed, his head is pointed up, and his mouth is pursed like he's howling. I really wish I could hear this too. Photo courtesy of X. That story was Doug Ford offers reporters his wily tip on dealing with nuisance coyotes by Brian Toey. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Sun on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The next story is Marlies and Penguins begin AHL's Eastern Final on Wednesday by Lance Hornby. The Maple Leafs have already endured razzing about the rival Montreal Canadiens going 3 rounds toward the Stanley Cup and Mitch Marner being in the Conn Smythe Trophy conversation for Vegas. Now, former Toronto general manager Kyle Dubas and his right-hand man, former Leafs forward Jason Spezza, could be getting more bragging rights, unless the Toronto Marlies do something about it. Short of a Leafs-Pittsburgh playoff series, yet to happen since Dubas was dumped in 2023, this American Hockey League best-of-7 Eastern Conference final between the Marlies and the Wilkes bar Scranton Penguins must suffice. Spezza, who serves as WBS's GM, will miss the start of the series as he is part of Team Canada's management team at the World's Men's Hockey Championship in Switzerland, as the medal round gets underway Thursday. This is the closest the Marlies have been to the Calder Cup final since 2019, against Charlotte in the East Final and the year before, winning it under Leafs assistant GM Dubas. That entailed defeating the Utica Comets in 5, sweeps of the Syracuse Crunch and Lehigh Valley Phantoms in best-of-7s, and taking out the Western champion Texas Stars. That last series went the distance and ended at then Ricoh Coliseum, with Dubas and coach Sheldon Keefe raising the cup. But duplicating it at the NHL level eluded the duo. Dubas eventually dismissed by his one-time backer Brendan Shanahan. Keefe fired a year later for consistent failure in getting the Leafs beyond the second round, ending up coaching New Jersey. Dubas's Penguins, with an unconventional roster that leaned on aging stars Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Erik Karlsson, and Chris Letang, made the playoffs, while Toronto didn't. Unlike his time with the Leafs, who began mortgaging their future, Dubas has 34 draft picks the next 4 years, 20 in the first 3 rounds. What makes the Marlies tick? These Marlies, under coach John Gruden, aren't exactly packed with prospects, but have resiliency with 2 come-from-behind wins to capture series on the road against Laval and Cleveland, where deciding games are decidedly not the parent team's strength. Those drafted by now-departed GM Brad Treliving include 2023 and 2024 first-rounders Easton Cohen, Ben Danford, 2023's Noah Chadwick, he's 185th overall, and 3 2020 Dubas drafts, goalie Artur Akhtamayov, defenseman William Villeneuve, and forward Ryan Tverberg. This will be the 3rd straight spring in which creative winger Cohen has played close to or past June 1, counting 2 Memorial Cup runs with the London Knights. Akhtamayov's continuation in the number 1 role, ahead of Dennis Hildeby, is a showcase for both the Leafs and NHL teams seeking crease depth with Toronto already strong at the position. Young free agent center Jacob Quillen played 24 games with the Leafs the past 2 seasons. Likewise, winger Luke Hames debuted late in the schedule. The veterans who have played the larger role in carrying the offense and defense are keeping their names prominent for incoming GM John Chayka. Vinny Lettieri, who didn't get a call-up to the Leafs last season, leads all AHL playoff scorers with 13 points, as left wing on the top line with captain Logan Shaw and Cedric Parr. The last Marley to front the AHL in playoff points was Andreas Johnson in that 2018 title run with 24 points. Bo Gruel has moved to center with Cohen and Tverberg, while Quillen and Hames team with Alex Nylander, a former WS farmhand. The Marlies also have Michael Pezzetta on an effective crash line, an AHL postseason high 48 penalty minutes. Chris Newbury was the last Marley in that position with 73 in the 2007 playdowns. How the series shapes up. Neither the Marlies nor Penguins were division leaders this season, though the latter finished 19 points higher and take a 1.77 goals against average through 9 Atlantic Division games into the series. Their 2-game regular season was a split, but with lineups vastly different to this week's Arms build-up. The Pens have a mix of players drafted in-house, such as Tristan Brose, who leads the team in playoff scoring, and top picks by other clubs, such as Winnipeg's first-rounder Rutger McGroarty, both forwards. They have a big defense and bring their own Russian goalie to counter Akhtamayov. Sergei Murashov is a fourth-rounder from 2022, who brings in a .919 save percentage and 5 games of NHL experience. If there is such a thing as video coach rivalries, Nick Biamonte of the Marlies used to control the remote for the Pens, while Troy Paquette switched screens to work for Pittsburgh. Game 1 at Mohegan Arena at Casey Plaza, just northeast of Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, is Wednesday. There is a picture of Pittsburgh Penguins general manager Kyle Dubas. He looks to be maybe at a rink. He's in a suit and tie. It's a polka dot tie, kind of cute. And he's got like some kind of pin on his lapel of his gray jacket. He's got brown hair, brown rimmed glasses, and brown eyes. He's very clean cut, and he's got like literally no expression in this picture. And there are some dudes kind of out of focus walking behind him. Photo courtesy of Getty Images. That story was Marlies and Penguins begin AHL's Eastern Final on Wednesday by Lance Hornby. The next story is London, Ontario doc cautioned for assessing patient for MAID outside Tim Hortons. It's spelled M-A-I-D. I'm assuming that stands for something, but I'm not sure. We'll find out. Story by Michelle Mandel. It's almost as frightening as a drive-through, on-demand service for medical assistance in dying. Dr. James McLean of London, Ontario, has been cautioned by the College of Physicians and Surgeons, or CPSO, and agreed to an undertaking of 6 months supervision over concerns about his administration of MAID, M-A-I-D, including assessing a 45-year-old patient outside a Tim Hortons in St. Thomas and personally driving him to the site in London where he provided him with the drugs that ended his life, despite his family's objection. Even more disturbing was his provision of MAID to a cancer patient without one of the usual 3 medications, because he couldn't find it in his briefcase, and the MAID kit he'd ordered from the pharmacy wasn't ready in time. After pronouncing the man dead and leaving the home, McLean was called back after the patient suddenly started breathing. The doctor returned to administer more drugs, including the missing neuromuscular blocking medication, and pronounced him a second time. Imagine the horror of that patient's family in witnessing the botched process in what was supposed to be a dignified way to die. According to a March report by the CPSO's Inquiries, Complaints and Reports Committee, the two made complaints against McLean led to an investigation by an independent assessor who found he, quote, did not meet the standard of practice of the profession, displayed a lack of judgment, and that his conduct exposes or is likely to expose patients to harm or injury in 5 out of 20 charts reviewed. It sounded like the doctor was too quick to sign off on MAID. The assessor found he was, quote, proceeding with assessments and provisions in a manner that undermines the independence of secondary assessors and risks coercion and making clinical assumptions without adequate corroboration when assessing a patient for MAID. The assessor also found he should have waited for the proper MAID kit from the pharmacy, and he failed to maintain professional boundaries and engaged with patients and families, quote, in ways that can be perceived as coercive or unprofessional. Nearly 5,000 MAID deaths in Ontario in 2024. First legalized in Canada in 2016, there were just under 5,000 MAID deaths in Ontario in 2024. Only medical practitioners can assess and approve an application to be eligible, and that person must either be suffering from a serious illness, disease, or disability that causes unmanageable physical or mental suffering. Another controversial track, for those who suffer from mental illness alone, has been delayed until March 2027. Thomas Dillon, according to his obituary, was a former skydiver who died peacefully on January 29, 2024 in his 46th year. His family told the Globe and Mail they didn't believe he should have qualified for MAID. In its decision, the committee said Dillon suffered from inflammatory bowel disease, associated surgeries, and mental health concerns. After he applied for MAID, McLean and a nurse practitioner assessed him outside a coffee shop and found him eligible under Track 2, which is designed for people whose death is not reasonably foreseeable, but who suffer intolerably from a grievous and irremediable medical condition. Not surprisingly, the committee was concerned about the doctor's choice of assessing Dillon in public, finding this reflected a lack of the level of formality and care expected when assessing requests for MAID. They were also troubled by McLean's many texts with Dillon that followed, including negative commentary on his family being opposed to him choosing MAID, and the doctor's decision to personally drive him to the MAID location. Quote, taken together, these actions created a risk that the respondent's involvement could be perceived as influencing the patient, especially with someone who had mental health issues, the committee said. As for the cancer patient's first failed MAID attempt, the committee said McLean blamed stress, including the last-minute and urgent request for his attendance and the substantial number of people present. The committee concluded McLean should be formally cautioned as he lacked insight into how certain aspects of his care and conduct required further improvement. But McLean, who has declined media requests for comment, can continue to provide medical assistance in dying. There is a picture of Thomas Dillon. He's the one that passed away on January 29th of 2024, the skydiver. So this picture is from his obituary. It's a close-up of him skydiving, so somebody skydived with him to take this picture. He's wearing a blue helmet that has a clear plastic piece over his face, so you could see his face. He's got a mustache and beard that's brown, and he looks completely like in wonder as he's looking down, and his feet are kicked up back behind him, and he's wearing like a blue and black jumping gear. Photo courtesy of SiftonFuneralHome.com. That story was London, Ontario doctor cautioned for assessing patient for MAID outside Tim Hortons by Michelle Mandel. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Sun on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The next story is Trump says medical checkup went perfectly by Ling Hui. U.S. President Donald Trump had a physical at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center Tuesday and said the exam went perfectly without providing details. Quote, "Everything checked out perfectly," all caps. "Thank you to the great doctors and staff!" exclamation mark. Trump said in a social media post. The visit lasted 3.5 hours at the Bethesda, Maryland Military Medical Center and was his fourth publicly disclosed checkup since taking office last year. The White House had announced the, quote, routine annual dental and medical assessment 2 weeks ago, describing it as a part of his regular preventive health care. Trump, who turns 80 next month, has sparked concerns over his health after he was recently seen with swollen ankles and legs and bruised hands. The White House has attributed the bruising of his hand to frequent handshaking and aspirin use. There is a picture of Donald Trump in the motorcade as he's going to the hospital for his tests. It's a black car, and you can just sort of see the outline of him. He's pretty darkly shadowed, but you see his profile. Photo courtesy of, who is it? Kent Nishimura via AFP via Getty Images. That story was Trump says medical checkup went perfectly by Ling Hui. The next story is anti-noise group cranks up complaints after latest Rogers Stadium concert by Jane Stevenson. Noise from concerts continues to affect area residents around Rogers Stadium at North York's Downsview Park, says Ingrid Boudet, the Toronto-based founder of the 4-year-old anti-noise advocacy group called No More Noise. Boudet said she heard from residents as far away as Vaughan who said that they could hear Bruno Mars's first of 5 shows at the outdoor venue this past Sunday night. Quote, "You have people 7 and 9 kilometers away that could hear the concert in Vaughan," Boudet told the Toronto Sun on Tuesday morning. So it really depends on wind. It depends on the weather, if it's rainy, if it's cloudy, a whole bunch of atmospheric conditions that influence how sound travels. So the really high frequency, the trills, and the sharp noises, those actually drop off very quickly. But the bass and the low frequencies can travel a long way. Bad weather marred Mars's original opening date at Rogers Stadium this past Saturday, so he postponed that show until this coming Sunday. His other remaining Toronto dates are Wednesday and Saturday. For its part, Live Nation Canada says it continues to work on any second issues that area residents may have. Community feedback is expected, says venue operator. Quote, "As with any large-scale outdoor concert venue, community feedback is expected," a Live Nation Canada spokesperson said on Tuesday. "We continue to work proactively to balance the fan experience with being a responsible neighbor, while operating within all compliance requirements." For her part, Boudet encourages better communication between the venue operators and the residents. "There were road closures that weren't communicated," she said. "They don't know when fireworks are going to happen after a show, so they don't know if they need to prep their dogs. They want a hotline. They want better traffic mitigation. All of those things are around sound, and a lot of those are solvable. That would really be a great place to start." The Live Nation Canada spokesperson reiterated what they previously stated in a media briefing last Thursday. Vinyl cladding added. "We continuously monitor sound levels and have independent municipal licensing officers on site and in surrounding communities to ensure we remain within permitted limits. We've also implemented additional mitigation measures, including new vinyl cladding behind the grandstands designed to further reduce off-site sound transmission, the spokesperson said. But Boudet said of the vinyl cladding, quote, "Residents tell me it's useless. It is really hard to contain something that's meant to be loud and amplify music." As for the presence of those municipal licensing officers, they're not actually controlling the sound, Boudet said. They want to make sure that they're in compliance with the noise exemption bylaw, but that doesn't mean that the noise levels are acceptable. It's in a residential area. Boudet said the allowable levels for amplified sound from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. is 55 dBA, what we can hear, and 70 dBc, what we can feel vibrationally, like the bass. But that Live Nation Canada applies for a noise exemption permit on the nights of Rogers Stadium's concerts to increase it to 85 dBA and 105 dBc. When asked to respond to those levels and the noise exemption permit specifically, the Live Nation Canada spokesperson said, "Rogers Stadium operates under sound regulations and permitted limits established and approved by the city for concert activity at the venue. As noted, we continuously monitor sound levels throughout the events and have independent municipal licensing officers on site and in surrounding communities to ensure compliance with the permitted requirements in place for each show." Councillor suggests hard noise barrier. As for York Centre, Downsview City Councillor James Pasternak's suggestion of building a hard noise barrier of soil and rocks around Rogers Stadium, Boudet doesn't like that idea either. "I haven't heard of rocks before," she said. So last summer, the biggest and most common complaint from the residents was vibration. You can put earplugs in for decibels. You can't do anything regarding vibration. So those low-frequency waves will travel through rock, will travel through ground. So it's really not going to do much. There is an aerial picture of Rogers Stadium, probably taken with a drone or something. So it's looking down at the building itself. It's black and it says Rogers Stadium in red letters. And then there is some other very bright green buildings. I'm not sure what they are. Maybe they're concession stands. And so you can see loads of people milling about on the grounds. And then in the distance, I think, are parked cars. Photo courtesy of Live Nation Canada. That story was Anti-Noise Group Cranks Up Complaints After Latest Rogers Stadium Concert by Jane Stevenson. The next story is Restrictions Placed on Travelers from Central Africa Amid Ebola Outbreak by Ling Hui. The federal government is introducing temporary travel and immigration measures in response to the Ebola outbreak that is spreading in the Democratic Republic of Congo and some neighboring countries. Travelers from the DRC, Uganda, and South Sudan will be required to self-isolate for 21 days, while immigration authorities are suspending applications from those three countries. Federal Health Minister Marjorie Michael and Immigration Minister Lena Diab said at a news conference on Tuesday afternoon. The health risk to Canadians from Ebola remains low, Michel said, adding that the self-isolation requirement, which matches the incubation period for the disease, is a precautionary approach to ensure the safety and security of Canadians. Restrictions in place ahead of World Cup. She said the restrictions are in line with those introduced in the U.S. and Mexico as the FIFA World Cup approaches. Effective Saturday and until August 29, Canadian citizens, permanent residents, and foreign nationals who have been in the DRC, Uganda, and South Sudan in the previous 21 days and do not have symptoms will have to quarantine for 21 days under the Quarantine Act. If they do not have a place where they can quarantine safely, they will be provided with an appropriate location, the Public Health Agency of Canada said in a news release. Travelers who have symptoms will be isolated at a hospital for further assessment. Officials pause immigration documents. Immigration officials will suspend the processing of documents from citizens of the 3 Ebola-affected countries for the next 90 days, effective Wednesday at 11:59 p.m., Diab said. The suspension would affect the processing of temporary and permanent resident visas, electronic travel authorizations, temporary resident permits, study permits, and work permits, Diab said. Let me be clear, documents will not be canceled, the immigration minister said, adding that once the measures end, documents that have not expired will be reactivated, and there is no need for anyone to reapply. U.S. travel ban. Last Friday, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the Department of Homeland Security banned non-citizens who had traveled to the DRC, Uganda, and South Sudan from entering the U.S. The most recent update from health authorities in the DRC said the African nation has 101 confirmed Ebola infections, 930 suspected cases, and 221 suspected deaths. There has been no cases of Ebola reported in Canada. There is a picture that was taken today in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and they're kind of out in like a dirty area. There is a makeshift tent made out of like 2x4s and plastic tarps, and there is a man wearing like all plastic, like a blue robe and plastic gloves, or rubber boots. He's got goggles on and a face covering, and it looks like he's hosing someone off, but what he's doing is that he's decontaminating somebody. It's a motorcycle taxi driver who's wearing a helmet, and they're lifting up their feet, so he's spraying them with some kind of decontaminant. Photo by Glody Murabazi via AFP via Getty Images. That story was Restrictions Placed on Travelers from Central Africa Amid Ebola Outbreak by Ling Hui. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the May 26 issue of the Toronto Sun. Your reader has been Melanie Guralnick. Thank you for listening.